Hello everyone, today I'd like to talk with you about a very important topic, at least in my view, related to the subtle plane. More specifically, it's about a trend I've noticed where a lot of people become fixated on the idea of the subtle plane. They think that if they start seeing the subtle plane, it'll somehow solve all their problems. But actually, most of them probably don't even understand what the subtle plane really is, how it looks, or the fact that it's not some magical realm you fly off to, where you suddenly become Superman. The subtle plane is really just a totality of everything that happens with you, including the way you think, the way you perceive the world, the energies you sense, and so on. There are very few cases, extremely rare, where a soul opens up extremely quickly and the person's conscious mind has no idea what's going on. Maybe the soul flies off somewhere onto the subtle plane, but the consciousness isn't ready. Often such situations can end badly, because it's like handing someone a grenade without them knowing how to handle it. So, today I'd like to talk about why I believe everything has its time, why I think traveling onto the subtle plane isn't a cure-all, and how it can even harm some people under certain circumstances. Let's start at the beginning. First of all, when a person flies out onto the subtle plane, they have no clue about safety rules or how to conduct themselves there. They might be thrilled. I got out there. So cool. But they don't grasp what could happen to them. They don't understand what's actually going on. It's like they've landed in a new world, one they know nothing about, while the ones already there know the rules of that world, so to speak. Meanwhile, the newcomer doesn't. That's one reason these sudden flights can be risky, because the person doesn't know where they can or can't go, what's allowed or not allowed, or how to defend themselves if something attacks them. That alone can create serious problems. Another factor is that the moment a person does get onto the subtle plane, they become, so to speak, an object of special attention for dark forces. The dark side pays close attention to any soul or consciousness starting to consciously use the subtle plane. Such people become targets, potentially attracting attacks. So, instead of solving your problems, entering the subtle plane might create new ones. For example, dark beings may launch direct attacks or approach you pretending to be magical teachers or even your parents or anyone else trying to deceive you. Reptilians, in particular, are quite skilled at chameleon tactics. They can project a false light that is highly misleading. And if you don't know how to read energy and strip away illusions, you may fall for it. Because perceiving the subtle plane isn't just flying somewhere and opening your eyes, going, wow, I see something. It involves scanning the space around you and learning to sense who's there, what energy they carry. It requires peeling back layers of illusion to glimpse the truth beneath it all, and that's not easy. It takes practice. And without that experience, you have very little protection. Another big point, and one I consider somewhat concerning, is that people often fixate on this idea that seeing the subtle plane is like a magic bullet. They believe that if they could just see it, everything would be fine. But that's dangerous thinking. They pour all their focus into this cone solution and forget other key factors. They stop paying attention to essential basics like their own mindset, because the number one thing we need to change in this illusory world is our thinking, to rework ourselves from the inside. Strip away the programming the system has drilled into us for so long. That is priority number one. Every single person has internal blocks, even if someone thinks, oh, I don't have any. Actually, we all do. I haven't fully dismantled all of mine, either. Some were imposed when we were children. They've taught us to think a certain way, and it takes time and effort to break free. In other words, every person is tied up in a kind of web, and you have to remove those blocks so you can escape it. Only then can you really say, I've stepped out of the matrix, I've changed my life, become free. Because just traveling onto the subtle plane won't make you feel free if you're still locked inside your own mental cage. That cage exists in your own thinking. So the subtle plane alone doesn't set you free. Real work on yourself is essential. Additionally, a lot of people see astral travel or subtle sight as something magical, beyond comprehension, as though it's a superpower, something that you either have or don't, and if you don't have it, you dream of getting it. But people don't realize that traveling onto the subtle plane is really just the sum of how you sense energy, your energy, other people's, the energy of your surroundings. At its core, it's about perceiving energy. The first step toward this subtle perception is empathy, being able to sense the subtle energies all around us, even though we can't see or touch them. Empathy itself is part of the subtle plane. Another reason people struggle is that they ignore the topic of personal boundaries. I've talked about personal boundaries a lot, though on YouTube I have only one video dedicated entirely to it, where I explained what personal boundaries are and how to form them. But some folks dismiss that, thinking it's nothing important. I also go into it in my Sonekni Club streams, in my Disconnection from Attachments courses, and in my boss course on intention. We go into it in depth. It seems some people still don't realize that personal boundaries, the ability to choose, for instance, I don't want this in my reality, I do want that. That's actually direct work with the subtle plane. It's also foundational for managing your own energy in your reality. When you learn to establish personal boundaries, saying, I'm removing this from my reality, I'm letting this in, it makes you feel the energies moving in your life, and that feeling of energy, that is the subtle plane. Step by step, you start to develop your intuitive sense. I've been like this since childhood. Yes, I had my third eye open, so to speak. But even so, it's been a lifelong process of development. Each tiny step gave me more confidence, from I sense something here to I caught a glimpse of something there to Shem, these sparks acts I seek. Let me investigate their properties, see how matter responds, and so on. It's never been just boom. Now I'm this epic being with wings on my back. Yet some people imagine it exactly like that. Since 2020, I've been communicating with a large number of people, and I've seen over and over that when they talk to me, many start flying out onto the subtle plane or become more aware of energy. Their sense sensitivity blossoms, and as I observe them, I realize that before they flew out, they'd done a huge amount of inner work. They'd started changing their worldview, shifting their consciousness. They'd cleaned up a lot of mental junk, because once your mind is ready to handle the subtle plane properly without messing up 10,000 times, that's when you can really venture there safely. And even if some parts of their journey happen intuitively, it's far more productive and less risky because they aren't weighed down by false perceptions. Yes, many things happen intuitively. Our soul knows what to do. But if our conscious mind holds on to misleading ideas, we could do something dangerous on the subtle plane, just because our mindset is out of sync. This is why, before venturing onto the subtle plane, you need to clear out any false or harmful perceptions in your mind. So, if you're extremely keen on seeing the subtle plane, if you feel you need that skill to cleanse yourself or understand the reasons for what's happening in your life, the first thing I'd advise is start small. Specifically, so start with personal boundaries and with intention, because you might think these things have nothing to do with the subtle plane, but in truth, they're more fundamental to it than you realize. Intention is the driving force that launches a person into the subtle plane in the first place. Everything you do there is done via intention. If you can't effectively use intention, you'll struggle on the subtle plane. That's why I often say you don't actually need to see the subtle plane in order to cleanse yourself. For example, you can do so just by using the tools I provide without or traveling or seeing anything directly. The desire to help yourself is an incredibly powerful form of intention, which nearly everyone is capable of. Personal boundaries are also intention in action, how we manage what we allow or disallow in our reality. If you truly want to fly out onto the subtle plane, I suggest you work on these two things. Practice establishing personal boundaries, and while you're doing that, Pay attention to the energy that moves through your reality, how it sets up those boundaries when you say, "No, I'm not allowing that in." Then practice using intention. Small steps, maybe bigger ones, too, because when I look at the subtle plane, I do it precisely through intention. If I want to know something that's happening on the subtle plane, I formulate an intention like, I want to see what this particular situation looks like, and I don't feel there's a barrier preventing me. I send out my intention, latch onto the energy of that event or object, and unravel it. Intention is the driving force that can even pull you into the subtle plane. By the way, lots of people in my Solnechny club have told me things like, Nadezda, I once set an intention to find real knowledge or real information, and that's how I discovered your channel. That's their intention at work. And it's beautiful to see. I'm glad you all appreciate the tools I'm sharing, tools to help you help yourselves, rather than just handing you a so-called magic pill. I want to give you practical methods so you can become your own healer or therapist, so you can work on your mindset, your health, learn to navigate the subtle plane, and transform your life however you wish. I've seen many comments from people in my courses saying their family life improves dramatically, or their situation at work changes for the better once they change themselves. Their perspective of the world shifts. They want to help themselves and they do the necessary work. Anyone who truly wants to help themselves can do it. It's not about any special prerequisites. Going back briefly to personal boundaries, some people say, I can't cleanse myself or remove something from my field because I don't see the subtle plane. If only I could see it, then I'd do it. In reality, that's a self-imposed block. It's the person telling themselves they can't achieve a positive outcome without fulfilling a certain condition. Our thinking has been shaped by dark forces to create these walls. But when we set up such barriers, our reality obeys. That's why I warn people never to trap themselves behind such limitations. Another key point for anyone wanting to see the subtle plane or travel there, something I discovered around age 30, 13 or 14 while I was already focusing heavily on energy, is that you must learn to quiet your internal dialogue. When you want to travel onto the subtle plane, it doesn't happen by accident. It happens through intention. You sit down, focus, and use intention to grab hold of the energy you need or to accomplish whatever you're aiming to do. And in those moments, you need concentration. Later, once you've practiced enough, traveling on the subtle plane might feel as natural as walking around your house. But at first, it's just like a small child learning to walk. Each step requires deliberate effort. The biggest obstacle to that effort is internal dialogue, which disrupts you nonstop. I've said before that under normal circumstances, we shouldn't have an inner voice chattering away. That constant internal chatter is actually a form of telepathic interference. We think it's us talking to ourselves, but it's not. Each of us has this radio receiver in our mind picking up telepathic inputs from astral entities. That's why it's called an internal dialogue, which implies two parties. When you talk only to yourself, it's a monologue. But this is a dialogue, meaning there's someone else. And that someone else are these astral beings. So we need to cut off those voices because as soon as you try to focus on the subtle plane, difference is they start screaming in your head, telling you to get up and make tea, or reminding you to scratch your back, doing anything they can to disrupt you. So eliminating internal dialogue is vital for focusing on yourself, understanding who you really are, and, of course, traveling onto the subtle plane safely. Besides inner voices, we also have what I call emotional electroshocks. Extreme emotions suddenly fired into our field, like anger flaring up out of nowhere over a dirty cup on the table. In that moment, 99% of people take that emotion personally, believing it's their own. Meanwhile, it's actually coming from an external source looking to harvest your energy. So, ridding yourself of these entities, inner dialogues, and emotional triggers is crucial both for everyday life and for subtle plane work. So, To wrap up, if you truly want to see the subtle plane, first do some serious self-work. Get rid of all the debris that could cloud your vision and lead to illusions. Because you don't want going onto the subtle plane to end up harming you. Trust me, I've gone places on the subtle plane I shouldn't have gone. Back when I didn't know any better, I got my fair share of bumps and bruises. I know people who have seriously suffered because they dove in, clueless, and got into big trouble. If you don't understand the laws of that realm, if you just follow curiosity, it can hurt you. Secondly, if you want to explore the subtle plane, start with the basics, learn to sense energy, develop your empathy, fine-tune your consciousness. A lot of people think I got all my knowledge direct from the subtle plane, as if I went there and magically downloaded how to remove entities. But in reality, these insights came from my soul's memory. The subtle plane is part of everything, yes, but I rely on what's stored within my soul. I've often described how to access this. You focus on the energetic center in your chest, that place where you feel joy or sadness. That's your soul center. When you direct your attention there, you can tap into your soul's memory. That's what I did from age 11 or 12. I sensed that all the knowledge I needed was inside me, but I had to remember it. I had to concentrate on my chest, ask questions, feel the answers. That's also the beginning of empathy, tuning into energies and decoding them carefully. And the third step is getting rid of that internal dialogue. Without clearing it out, it's very hard to shift your thinking or your perceptions because those entities will keep throwing you off track, pulling you back into the system. That's why you also have to tackle not just the chatter, but the emotional electroshocks. Anyway, that's all for now. This has turned into quite a long video, but I hope I managed to convey my thoughts in a helpful way and maybe give you some ideas for action. One last reminder, any of my content dealing with globalists, Freemasons, Illuminati, or secret orders is now on Telegram. I've shared a lot of intriguing podcasts there recently. For instance, I discussed this huge structure I saw on the subtle plane, posted a drawing on my Drevny Dushi, such ancient souls, Telegram channel, and then someone in the Solnechny Club sent me a Masonic illustration that exactly matched what I'd seen. I started piecing it all together, made new podcasts decoding that image. It's a continuation of the matrix decoding I've done a lot of on YouTube. So if you find that topic interesting, head over to Telegram. The latest two podcasts there are quite casual without the complex calculations that confuse some folks. It's all straightforward and interesting, so feel free to check it out. For now, that's it. I love and embrace all of you. See you soon. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel. Become a member of my Telegram channel and discuss with like-minded people as a supporting club member.